What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm James and this is Clearwater Fishing, and today we're talking about the mounting options for your live sonar units. So I'm talking about the Humminbird Mega Live Imaging, the LOWRANCE Active Target, and of course the Garmin LIVESCOPE system. So I'll be talking about how to mount these guys and the specific strategies behind the certain mounting systems. So just so you know what I'm talking about, we have truly 4 mounting options. One is just dumb and we're not going to spend much time on it, which is the transom mount. We're not going to do that. That's just dumb. Don't do it. Just don't. The other options is that you can mount it to your trolling motor as always. You can also mount it to a bow transducer pole, just a manual pole, or you can have an automatic one. And we're going to talk about the 3 different strategies behind these installation options and hopefully help you guys figure out which installation option is best for you. Hey guys, right now is a great time to subscribe to my channel. I do all sorts of fishing videos, anywhere from fishing tech to certain fishing strategies and techniques, all the way down to how to catch your very first bass. So you make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell, and you'll be well on your way to catching more fish. So when I was making this video, I only had really one type of mount in mind, and it was the mount that provided the 3 modes of view. And I'm going to use LiveScope's terminology. You have the forward view, the down view, and the perspective view. For LiveScope, you're going to have to buy that extra mount. And for LOWRANCE's Active Target and Hummingbird's Mega Live Imaging, those mounts already come with the system, so you're not going to have to buy a separate mount. It's a shaft mount that allows you to have all 3 viewing options, so keep that in mind when you're watching this video. So all 3 unit types and all 3 options that I'm going to talk about here mount to a vertical shaft. So it doesn't matter what you're using to mount it to. It could be PVC piped duct tape to the side of your boat, and this mount is going to work, even though I don't really recommend doing that. But as long as you have a vertical shaft to mount to, you're going to be just fine. So our very first mounting option we're going to talk about is the trolling motor shaft option. So on this option, you're obviously going to be mounting it to your trolling motor shaft. It's going to be easy for you to identify where it's aimed because it's going to be aimed where your boat's heading. It's also going to be easy to maneuver as far as aiming it because it's attached to your foot pedal. So if you need to move your boat to the right, well, it's going to aim to the right. Once you deactivate your prop, you can just do a clear sweep in an area and view that area. If you don't quite understand what I'm talking about as far as being able to sweep and all that stuff, that's okay. I got a couple scenarios to help illustrate that a little better. So first, let's imagine you're going down a bank, you're throwing a crankbait, going down the bank, and you move the boat a little forward because you're done fishing that particular area. So you move the boat forward, then you can use the trolling motor to sweep at the bank, and you identify an underwater laydown. You really don't want to throw your crankbait at it. So you pick up your jig and toss your jig at it 2 or 3 times, and you snag a big old fat Sally out of that laydown. This is a great strategy as you're fishing down the bank, not only to see what's coming, but it allowed you to avoid getting your crankbait snagged, and allowed you to switch your baits up to a jig or a Texas rig or something that's weedless and go catch a big old fat Sally. So the second scenario here, you are spot locked on a brush pile off of a point, and you found a large group of crappie that you want to sit and fish for a little bit. With the trolling motor mount, there's only one place you can be, and that is behind the brush pile, facing the wind. Because when you're in spot lock, well, the wind is going to blow your boat to where it's facing the wind. So you're not being very friendly to your co-angler, and it's very difficult to move around and not spook the fish if they are shallow. So in this option, you're providing yourself a really good benefit to being able to fish the area. But say the brush pile is much larger and you want to maneuver around it, it's really hard to be able to see those fish and maneuver around it at the same time. So if you wanted to move a little further up on the brush pile, well, you're going to spook the fish, and the fish that are on the opposite side of the brush pile may not even want to bite anymore. So in this scenario, you're trying to keep the view of the crappie. in your live sonar unit, but by moving up on top of it and being able to fish it better, you've actually spooked the fish and scared those fish off. And you actually haven't done any benefit to your co-angler unless he's up there fishing next to you. One benefit that I didn't talk about with the trolling motor mounting option is that you can follow a school of bait fish all over the lake. Since you're also moving in the direction you're looking, it makes it much easier, especially during the fall when all these bass are chasing the bait. Next, we're going to be looking at the bow transducer pole. Whether it's the manual version or the electric version, we're going to be kind of talking about them together. And really the only major difference is that you can either use a remote, handheld remote, keychain remote, a foot pedal remote, or you're just using your hand to turn the transducer. So the main key to a bow transducer pole is that you're able to turn it independent of what the trolling motor is doing. So a really big thing here is being able to spot lock and look at various different areas without having to take your boat off a spot lock and then reinitializing it. This should be pretty easy to picture, but let's go back over the two scenarios once again. So we're fishing our bank again with a crankbait, and while we're fishing, we have our live sonar aimed at the bank. Sometimes maybe a little forward, maybe a little back. It just really depends on where we're mostly aiming our cast. As we move forward, we can view exactly what we're going over, but just a note here, if you're using the manual pole or maybe the remote, you're going to have to stop fishing to turn your transducer pole until you find the area that you want to do again. So this is definitely unlike using the trolling motor mount option, but you can get a foot pedal remote that you can still be fishing and operate your bow transducer pole. I'm not sure how much the foot remote actually helps this, because you're going to have to be moving your foot from one remote to the other. And I don't know how much of a distraction that is going to be while you're trying to make cast. Personally, I've never experienced it. And for those of you who have or have some view on it, let me know in the comments below. As you can tell by our little scenario there, you're still going to get a pretty good view of what's coming down the bank. And you're still going to be able to see those laydowns and cover points before you actually get to them. So you can make adjustments to your cast or adjustments to your presentations. Now let's look at our next scenario, and this is where I think the bow transducer pole really excels. So just like before, you find a brush pile full of crappie using your live sonar. But now you can move to the side and let your buddy have some of the action. And you can fish the entire brush pile without disturbing those fish and keeping your boat on spot lock. And as you can tell, you can keep a far enough distance away from the brush pile not to disturb those fish and not to spook them. At this point, I currently use a bow transducer pole, just the manual version, on my bass tracker. But when I get a new boat, I do plan on installing it on the trolling motor, mostly because I fish by myself and I do lots of bass fishing. I do crappie fishing from time to time, and I really enjoy it, but I don't do it all the time, and I don't feel that the advantage of having a separate transducer pole will be there for me when I'm fishing for my crappie, because I know mostly where my brush piles are, my trees, and they're pretty easy to find and not spook the fish because they are in pretty deep water. And another reason right now that I don't have my LiveScope unit on my trolling motor is because my trolling motor is not very friendly with transducers. It is a unit that slides up and down. The shaft slides through the head and when you're retracting it, so it's not really friendly on the cables and cords, and I really don't want to accidentally damage a $1,000 transducer. Don't get me wrong, the transducer pole option is still an excellent option. Either way you fish, whether it's aimed mostly toward bass or crappie or another species, it is still a fantastic way of getting your transducer in the water where you can control it separately of your trolling motor. And even if you're not in a scenario like me where you're worried about damaging your transducer, it is still a cheap and viable option if you use the manual pole or even if you want to step it up and do the electric pole as well. They do get kind of costly. I've seen cornfield crappie, I believe they have theirs at about $1,100, so you're going to have to fork out quite a bit of money to buy the electric version and the versions that you can use remotes with. You might have a few options out there that are a little cheaper. The manual version that I use currently comes from Fishing Specialties. The guys down there do excellent jobs, and they worked with me on how to get it the exact height and length that I needed to make it fit over my bow. Either option that you pick will do you a great job. It's just up to you guys to learn and adapt how to use that and make the best of whatever you buy. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, to smash that thumbs up. And if you're not already, please subscribe to my channel and definitely help me keep making videos like this for you guys. But just like always, until next time, get out there and go catch you some fish.